Welcome back to another episode of Tractor Roy. My name is Trent, and I picked up something that I'm probably way too excited about. Don't really have a need for it. It was cheap. I only paid $200 for this thing, and we'll see what we got. Whoa! We are looking at a early 60s. The one I could find online was about a 1963, so I'd say this is somewhere around that vintage. LeRoi 125 CFM air compressor. And if we pop our little side panels off here, take a look under the hood. This piece of equipment has here's a serial number for you, a D266, a LeRoi D266. No, 226. Oh, I said that wrong. A LeRoi D226 engine. I don't really know for sure what's going on with these, but Allis Chalmers made the blocks for them. So like if you rebuild these, you can use a WD-45 rebuild kit, or D17 or WD, maybe even 170. Those are the same pistons that it uses, and I'm pretty sure same sleeves too. I think we're in luck because this thing does turn. At least I had it turning. Yep. It does move. Not to say that we got some other issues somewhere, but it does move. I really feel like that's an aftermarket hour meter, but it shows 692. I bet that's closer to 10,692, not just 692. Is our choke? Oh yeah, our choke's freed up. So this should be a Marvel Schebler carburetor. Yeah, I do have extra carburetors, but this thing looks in pretty good shape too. All in all, this thing isn't too bad looking. These little latches are kind of cool. Like when you roll this cover up, you just flip the latch over. Keeps it from blowing on you. That's pretty simple. I like it. When I got up to it, it had the cap off of it, like you can see. The spark plugs were pulled out. He had written intake 20, exhaust 25. Well, there's a question mark on there. If this is anything like those Allis Chalmers, I'm pretty sure it's like 16 for both the intake and exhaust. This valve cover was off. It was laying right over there. And when I looked at it, oh, maybe it's melted. Well, we did have some warm weather, so it's probably melted. As you can see, the exhaust rotted off, just up to the sky. So that manifold on the other side, probably full of water. There's some ice sitting in the top of this. Yeah, see, that's a little loose compared to that one. Well, I guess no, those are, what is it? Exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust, exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust. I don't know. We'll see. Most important thing though is this thing does turn. I don't know if it turns full 360, but it does turn. I believe I'm just going to go, like this is even the same. I don't know, everything that I'm looking at is the same as that Allis Chalmers I'm working on. So I'll probably use the Allis Chalmers book to go off the engine for this. Yeah, I'll deal with that later. I don't really know how much of the back end's going to work. I have no idea when the last time this thing ran was. There is coolant in there. It's drained down, but I did open the petcock on the other side when I was first looking at it. And it did come out, or some did come out. I want to say the oil level looked good too. Well, this thing has a little mechanical fuel pump. The gas tank does say it's full, but it smells very varnished, so I'm probably going to have to use a gravity tank to get this thing going, and it's going to be fun to get out. The fill for it's way up here. But I do like that they give you a gauge. It's actually pretty cool. So the goodies in the toolbox is here on the sides. Gave us barb Chicago coupling. Is that a fuel level checker? I don't know. A couple more of those. Some jackhammer bits. I didn't get a jackhammer with it, unfortunately. I don't really know what my plan is for doing with this. I've got a 1-inch impact that uses that same Chicago coupling. So that's the only tool I have that'll use it, or that needs this air compressor right now. But I kind of think I want to get a sandblaster. Just get a little Harbor Freight sandblaster for it. I think that'd be pretty sweet. Good little unit for it. Oh, what else? We're missing the air intake boot here. Those are probably not going to be terrible to find. Battery goes here. It's got a generator on it still, so my guess is it's still a 6 volt. I don't really know where you would put the battery because it's all rotted out right there. Oh, there's our starter solenoid. We don't have any cables coming into this side toolbox. Speaking of which, this toolbox, we have 2 seemingly very good quality 1-inch hoses. Actually, that one might be like an inch and a quarter, and this one's a 1 inch. This manifold is also hanging out, but this guy had tons of engines laying around. His kids are getting rid of this stuff. It's where we got those Farmall A tractors and that little Mitsubishi. Oh, I think that's pretty much all there is to look at right now. We just aired the tires up. They're still holding there. Towed it home. It's only like right over there, like 3 or 4 lots from me. So it's pretty close. I kept driving by. We bought those A's from him. He called us about those and had his number, and I kept seeing this air compressor and was thinking about it. And I was like, you know, when we're painting these tractors and stuff, a sandblaster would be really handy. And I could use this hang for now. Like, I mean, it's kind of a little much for like airing up tires. And I do have that 1/2-inch Milwaukee impact. But I guess at the same time, it is nice to have options. So I could just drag this back into town, like if I have to fill up one of those tires, or use that 1-inch impact. I don't know. I don't have sockets for that 1-inch impact. So I guess it gives me an excuse to get some more tools, which I suppose is fine. Okay, as you can tell, it's the next day. We got this thing pulled into the shop. We had a pretty good storm come through, so it had a bunch of snow on it. I think it's for the most part melted off. If you hear any noises, my parts cleaner is in here helping. So he's the one that's doing the tapping. He's working on the oil pan for that A right now. So I think the plan for this, I really can't get on the front of this crank. It's a little too close to that radiator, and it's going to take a big socket, like a 1 3/4, maybe even up to a 2-inch socket on the end of that. For some reason, that's the size of nut they used. So I can't really get anything on there. I think we're going to try and turn this thing over with the starter instead of by hand. I can get it to move. I have a theory that we got a bunch of water in there from that valve cover being open, and it's frozen on the bottom. We'll take a look down the bores since the spark plugs are out, see how they look. But we're going to try and drain the oil out. I kind of get the feeling we're not going to be able to. I'm going to throw a heater under there, leave it for, I don't know, a little while, try and melt that ice, get all that oil drained out. We'll put fresh oil in there. Then once we can get that starter working, I guess that means we're going to have to work on the electrical system. We're going to have to work on that electrical system, so while I got a heater under there, I'm going to have to get a new, looks like ignition switch and a new push button switch for the starter, is my guess. Yep, there's that. Looks like they had an engine oil pressure cut off, or shut off, cut off, whatever you want to call it. That's been bypassed at some point in the past. The cables don't look bad coming from the battery. They're not all cracking out. So we'll try that. So we're going to drain the oil. Like I said, we're going to put some fresh stuff in there. We're going to have to throw a heater under there if it doesn't drain. We're going to work on the electrical system, use the starter to turn the engine over without the spark plugs in. After that, we're going to see if this carburetor needs torn apart. I'm not really feeling like it does. The gas tank is just full of old gas. So I'm going to stick a boat tank up top, go into the carburetor. It's got a fuel pump on the side, but we just won't use that right now. We're going to see if this thing will fire up. It's kind of what I was afraid of. You can't see anything under there. So the gas tank sits down in the front and the air tank down in the back. So this engine is like tucked up in there. Couldn't really get a camera into it. But we're full of water. Water's frozen. That's not a bad thing though, because that means all the water's settled to the bottom. So I'll just throw a torpedo heater under here. Probably go clean up around the shop a little bit while we're waiting. But I've got to use a fancy new tool. This is a plug wrench, or a plug socket. Yeah. And it perfectly fits this 7/16 squared end on this plug. There's no sponsorship here. I just think these are freaking cool. And I saw them and I had to get them, and it turns out they work very well. they've got internal ones. So like on these formals, they got the internal ones. You can stick a 1/2 inch ratchet in there, but it's still a little sloppy. So now we got a 9/16 that perfectly fits it. This goes 7/16, half, 9/16, and 5/8, both external like this one and internal like these. So this socket, fantastic. Then you don't gotta throw like find the right 12 point for this odd size, or stick a adjustable crescent wrench on there, or a pair of vice grips like I've done before, or channel locks. Anyways, these things pretty handy, and it was a fairly cheap set. Got a link in the description below. Okay, so after running that torpedo heater under there for, what was it, maybe 2 hours? Had a bunch of the oil. It all drained out. It must have melted like right around the edge of the pan and was able to drain all the oil out. But we still had that chunk of ice in the bottom, and I couldn't get the engine to turn. So put the plug back in, drain another 1.5 gallons of water out. So there's probably 2, maybe 3 gallons total of water inside of this thing. Put the plug back in, put fresh oil in there. Got it to turn by hand, a full 360, so I think we're going to be okay down on this end. We'll start just with some WD, a light oil. We'll spray all of our rocker arms, because who knows when they had any lubrication last. We'll spray inside of our spark plug holes. So we're nice and lubed in our cylinders. And now my plan is I'm just going to use this battery and a set of jumper cables to jump the starter. That way we can get this thing to spin with no compression, because we have the spark plugs out. Make sure that we're getting some good oil flow throughout this whole engine. So I'm going to stick the negative on our ground right there, because that's where the battery lead grounds to the block, and it's close to the starter, so there's less connections that are going to be corroded. On the starter solenoid, this is the battery side right here, and this is the starter side over here. So I'm going to clip the battery, or the jumper cable here. That way it bypasses this solenoid. And then I'll just have to touch the terminals of the battery to get this thing to try and spin over. Clear prop. I didn't adjust the valves, but they're all working pretty great. I can feel compression coming out of each of these. Let's see what our oil pressure looks like. Oh, look at that. Got some good oil pressure. So I think this engine's going to be in good shape. I think it's going to be a runner. I can feel compression coming out. All the valves are working like they should. They're all bouncing back. We got good oil pressure. I don't think we messed up our crank. So I'll go ahead and pull our jumper cables off. So I think I'm going to sand the points, make sure that those are getting some good spark. I can just run an alligator clip from our battery to our coil, the hot side of our coil, and I can bypass all of our regular electrical stuff. I don't have to worry about those switches. I did get new switches, so maybe I just put those in while I'm here. I think that's the next step. I don't have new spark plugs, but I got to set off that WD that I'll use for now, just to, proof of concept kind of thing, so I don't have to run to town for spark plugs. We'll do that, stick a boat tank on top, filled with some fresh gas, and I think that's it. This old tank, probably going to be pretty plugged and pretty nasty. I don't really want to deal with that right now, because I don't really have plans on using this, just want to get it running. So I've kind of got you wedged up there. Take our rotor off and our dust cover. Oh, we got a little felt gasket. Oh, maybe that's attached to the dust cover. The dust cover that doesn't really protect much. Oh, and it is attached. That's nifty. Boy, our points don't look too bad either. Okay, I got some super fine sandpaper, some 320. This is a different distributor than that Allis Chalmers is, so I don't really know what kind of points. It's going to take a second to find those, I bet. It's a good idea to blow in there or run like your t-shirt or a rag through there. Get rid of all that dust, because that dust can prevent a good contact on it too. I'm going to go ahead and throw this back together now. fairly confident that will take care of any of our ignition issues. Go ahead and stick our cap on. Oh, apparently we don't have a little alignment notch. That's nice. Okay, I'm going to use my brand used spark plugs in here. So the way that this was kind of taken apart really makes me think that he went to do a tune-up on it and then stopped in the middle of the project. I mean, our distributor cap was off. We had all our spark plugs out. The valve cover was off. He had written down the valve lash. And the engine was able to turn. So I really feel like this thing was running. He went to tune it up and then just lost interest for whatever reason. And I'll probably, once I know this thing runs, I'll give it a tune-up. New plugs, new wires, cap rotor, points, the whole works, especially new wires. But there's our power from our coil. And we want 1, 3. So we're going to have to switch these two. Ooh, there's another theory. Somebody had this miswired so it didn't run right. That could have been what happened. 4. That one doesn't grip very tight. All temporary. 4 and 2. There. Okay, so our wires are all attached. I'm assuming that I really haven't found many bad spots in the wiring of this thing. I think because it's under a cover here, everything's in fairly good shape. This is the oil fill. That's why you can see some wet spots. I threw it in there. Some spilled out. Okay, we're going to temporarily fire this off some starting fluid. This alligator clip on the end of the wire is going over to the coil. I'm going to stick that clip on my battery right there. On the positive side, I'll leave the negative hooked up, and I'll do the same thing I just did on the starter. I'll put the ground where the ground bolts to. I'll put the positive on the starter terminal that's going to the starter. So then when I touch the jumper on the battery, it'll crank the engine. This will be attached to the battery. As soon as the engine fires, I can disconnect the starter jumper, but then this will still have power going to it. So I'm only going to run it on starting fluid for right now until we can see if this thing's going to work, and then I'll go a little bit farther, hooking up the electrical switches that we're missing, and then working on either a temporary tank to run this for a little bit longer or that one underneath. So when I hook up the coil like this, oh, we got sparks, so that means we have continuity. We don't want to leave that on, otherwise it'll burn up the points. Spraying a little go-go juice. Let's see what'll happen. Whoa, we got a dead battery. Okay, I unhooked I did run this for a while, but I unhooked our coil wire. We'll find a different battery that hopefully has a little more juice. Well, I took my spark plugs out. I can just turn the engine by rotating. Maybe. There we go. I can turn the engine by rotating the fan. So my issue is in the starter. So I got to take that off. I bet you contacts are. My door started trying to close on me. Anyways, I bet you the brushes are, I don't know, need cleaned up or something. So that kind of sucks. But luckily there's only the 3 bolts here and then 1 for that starter wire coming over. It's not terrible, but it could be worse. Or it could be better. Or it could be worse. Okay, I've only had like 10 or 15 minutes here or there the past couple of days working on this thing. So, what have I got done? Our tank was surprisingly clean. We cleaned out the valve and the line that goes up to the fuel pump. I've got a couple gallons of fresh gas in that tank. I installed an inline fuel filter. Anything that's left in that tank should be diluted, and then we should be able to catch it with that filter. There's also a sediment bowl. I cleaned that out. It's looking okay. There's a primer on this pump, but I can't tell if it's actually pumping, and I haven't got any fuel to come up, so I'm hoping I can just start it off as dumping a little bit of gas in the carb and start it up that way, and then it'll kind of self-prime and that pump will pick up suction. We'll see. I got the valve cover on. I got some new nuts from hardware store. That's all attached. I double checked the timing on this thing. I was off a little bit. I think I was off 180. But I just stuck the cap on from where it was before. The firing order of an Allis Chalmers is 1243. A Farmall is 1342. So this was made by Allis Chalmers, so I'm assuming that it's going to be that 1243. So that's how I have it set. Our points are filed. What else did we do? I was having some starter issues and some battery issues. I pulled the starter apart, cleaned everything up, checked the brushes, they're all good. This thing is cranking good now. We got some fresh spark plugs in there on the other side. I got our switches put in. This is wired. They're upside down, but it bugs me, but I wanted to keep the placard. So this one's the ignition. Down is on, and then this one's the starter. It's not a momentary, it's just a constant right now. So I do want to fix that. Battery. It goes right here. It's one of those long, skinny ones. I have no idea what group size it is. That's off of like the bunch of tractors use it. I know our 2510 John Deere uses that style of battery. So I think I'm going to set you up. I don't know, because we don't have an exhaust. I guess maybe right here is about as good as it gets. So go ahead, attach our battery terminals. Oh, give her a little spritzing of gas off the temp tank. I could set this up to the carburetor, but I want to try and get the actual, yeah, there we go, the actual fuel tank working. It's going to be loud and obnoxious. Choker, ignition on, clear prop. Maybe I'll try some starting fluid. Maybe that gas didn't quite get in there. It doesn't like it. Clear prop. Oh. We're firing on a couple. Oh, this is a Prestolite starter gear, so it kicks it out weird. I mean, it kind of runs. It's promising. I might have to pull that carb out and clean it. But I pulled the plug and sprayed some brake clean in there, and there wasn't a bunch of nasty stuff. Ah! Okay, so I just walked around the other side, and my fuel tank, my fuel pump is picking up some fluid. I don't know if you can really tell. But we're picking up gas, which means we're not quite full on our bowl yet. So it might still be some more cranking and starting fluid until we can get that bowl filled up. And then the fuel pump can fill up the carburetor bowl. And then this thing will run on its own. Ideally, run on its own. Whoa. Ooh, we're getting there. Okay, clear prop. Gosh, I like the sound of that. It's getting there. We'll fire it again. Gosh, it's so close. Whoa. I'm gonna. Oh, we got a fire underneath too. Now we're good now. Yeah. Well, that's why we're trying to get gas into it, I guess. Hey, we got some in the bowl now. Really? Yep. So this is the gas we're dealing with. That's clearing out. This was probably from the fuel pump, I guess. Kind of filtered back into the bowl. Okay, I filled up that sediment bowl and then primed it a bunch of times. Hopefully we're close enough to fuel that I don't need ether anymore, but we'll see. Oh, dang. So our diaphragm pump freed up a little bit. I think getting some fresh gas in there softened stuff a little bit. That stuff can still get brittle, so it could fail on me here. But we got that pumping some gas out of there. I pulled off this fuel line going from the pump to the carburetor, cleaned it out. It's freed up, or no plugs or old gas in there. I took out the main jet and the pilot jet, sprayed a bunch of brake clean in there. We connected the line back up. I ran that primer on the fuel pump by hand. It fills our bowl up. We should, and I topped it off full of coolant. We should be ready to go. This should be it. Fingers crossed that we're getting fuel to the carb now. Here we go. Clear prop. Oh. Okay, come on. Oh, it was running on its own, and it was making air. It makes air. It wants to. Half choke, maybe? No. It is running on gas. Maybe it's just got a bunch of old stuff still. Dang it, it's so close. Oh, it's so close. It is so close. It almost seems to me like it's draining the carb out, the carb bowl. Yeah, I think that fuel pump's not keeping up with it. Yeah, so when the engine runs, it drains that bowl out before the fuel pump can keep up with it to fill it back up. It's not running on all cylinders there. Yeah, we definitely have a fuel pump issue. Maybe. Okay, I'm going to fire that compressor up and run the only tool I have with a Chicago fitting. So, still has a little bit of work left to do. I don't know if it just needs ran, get some of that carbon freed up. I mean, an exhaust muffler would sure help. But anyways, it runs. I'm super excited. This thing makes air. I paid $200 for this thing. I've got, I think, $13 worth of switches into it and some cleaning, and that's it. I think I put more money and gas in it. That's now leaking on the floor. I got to take care of that fitting under there. Anyways, I am super excited for this thing. We're going to get a sandblaster. I got a 1-inch impact now. I don't have any sockets, but I have the impact, so now I got to get some tools. So if you enjoyed this episode of Tractor Roy, make sure to hit that thumbs up. Throw a comment down below. Let me know if you want to see more of this LeRoi air compressor. I think I'm going to Maybe throw a fresh coat of paint on it here this spring. Clean it up a little bit. You can't have something all raggedy like this. Paid good money for this thing. So if you want to see more episodes like this, more revivals of more heavy equipment or stuff like this than just tractors, throw a comment down below. If you're not subscribed already, make sure to do that now. And thanks for watching another episode of Tractor Roy. Hope I'll catch you on the next one.